My name is Ruth Thompson, and I'm 62 years old. The day my daughter-in-law changed the locks on me wasn't just about missing one babysitting weekend. It was the moment I discovered how little my own family valued my health, my time, and my worth as a human being. You see, when you're a widow living alone, when your only son chooses his manipulative wife over his diabetic mother, when you're literally locked out in the rain while your granddaughter cries for you behind a door you can no longer open, that's when you realize that sometimes family can be your greatest betrayal. But what Jessica didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had just inherited something that would change everything. Before I tell you how a simple doctor's appointment led to a courtroom showdown that shocked our entire Minneapolis suburb, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if you truly connect with this story. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let me take you back to that September morning when everything changed. The alarm clock read 5 o'clock a.m. that Friday morning, but I'd been awake for 20 minutes already, my joints aching from the dampness that September brings to Minnesota. I shuffled to the kitchen, started the coffee, and began preparing Emma's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes shaped like butterflies. My granddaughter would arrive at 6:30 sharp, as she had every Friday for the past 2 years. As I mixed the batter, I couldn't help but think about how different my life had become. 3 years ago, when Robert passed away from his sudden heart attack, I thought I knew what loneliness felt like. Our house in Edina, the one where we'd raised Derek, hosted countless Thanksgivings, celebrated 35 anniversaries, suddenly felt like a mausoleum. Every corner held a memory. Every room echoed with absence. That's when Derek suggested I move closer to them. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone in that big house," he'd said, Jessica nodding beside him with what I thought was genuine concern. "There's a lovely little place for sale just 2 blocks from us. Emma would love having Grandma nearby." I sold our family home for far less than it was worth because I wanted to move quickly, to be near the only family I had left. The $420,000 from the sale seemed like enough to buy the smaller house and have a comfortable retirement. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly that comfort would evaporate. "Mrs. Thompson, we really need help with the new roof," Jessica had said 6 months after I'd moved. "The contractor says it's $8,000, and with Derek between jobs..." I wrote the check. Then came the car repairs, $3,000. Emma's private preschool, $12,000 for the year. "Just until we get back on our feet," Jessica always promised. By my count, I'd given them over $20,000 in 2 years, not including the free childcare I provided 3 to 4 days a week. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Coleman's office. "Reminder, your blood work results are in. Please don't miss Monday's appointment. Urgent discussion needed." My stomach clenched. The word urgent from a doctor is never good, especially when you're battling pre-diabetes. But before I could dwell on it, another message popped up. This one from Jessica. "Need to talk about house repairs. Also, can you watch Emma all weekend? Important." I stared at that word. Important. Everything in Jessica's world was important, urgent, critical. Everything except my health, my time, my life. I thought about the envelope sitting in my desk drawer, the one from my cousin Eleanor's estate lawyer. I'd been putting off opening it, afraid it might just be notification of some small memento Eleanor had left me. Eleanor and I had been close as children but drifted apart after she made her fortune in tech startups. She'd died 2 months ago, childless and, I assumed, leaving everything to charity. The doorbell rang at 6:25. Jessica never waited until the agreed-upon time. Through the peephole, I saw her standing there, Emma in her arms, designer diaper bag slung over her shoulder, checking her phone with the expression of someone far too important to be kept waiting. I opened the door, and Emma immediately reached for me. "Gamma! Gamma!" Her chubby arms wrapped around my neck, and for a moment, all my frustration melted away. This was why I did it. This precious child was worth every sacrifice. "We need to talk," Jessica said, breezing past me into my living room without invitation. Jessica didn't even wait for me to offer coffee. She set Emma down with her iPad and turned to me with that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Ruth, Derek and I have an amazing opportunity this weekend." His college roommate invited us to Napa Valley. He owns a vineyard now. It's a networking thing. Could really help Derek's career. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. This weekend? Jessica, I know it's short notice, but you're always saying how much you love spending time with Emma. She was already pulling Emma's things from the diaper bag, laying them out on my coffee table like she was marking territory. We'd leave tonight and be back Monday morning. I can't watch her this weekend. The words came out firmer than I'd intended. I have a doctor's appointment Monday morning that I absolutely cannot miss. Jessica's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. A doctor's appointment? Can't you just reschedule? It's probably just a routine checkup. It's not routine. It's about my diabetes management. My blood work came back concerning, and Dr. Coleman specifically said, "Oh, Ruth." Jessica's voice took on that condescending tone I'd grown to despise. "You're not even fully diabetic yet, just pre-diabetic. My mother had that for years and she was fine. This trip could change everything for Derek's career, for our family's future." I thought about all the times I'd rearranged my life for them, the senior center trips I'd canceled, the book club meetings I'd missed, the physical therapy appointments I'd rescheduled until my hip pain became chronic. "Jessica," I said, "no, I need to take care of my health." That's when Derek walked in, looking exhausted as always. He worked long hours at a marketing firm that paid him just enough to maintain Jessica's lifestyle expectations. "What's going on?" "Your mother is refusing to watch Emma this weekend," Jessica said, her voice dripping with hurt. "We finally have a chance to do something for ourselves, to advance your career, and she's choosing a doctor's appointment over her own granddaughter." Derek looked at me with those same brown eyes that used to beg for one more bedtime story. "Mom, couldn't you just this once?" "I've done just this once 100 times, Derek." I stood up, my knees protesting. "I've watched Emma every single time you've asked. I've given you money whenever you've needed it. But I'm 62 years old, I have health issues, and I need to see my doctor." Jessica stood up abruptly. "You know what? This is exactly what's wrong with your generation. You're all so selfish. We're trying to build a life here, trying to give Emma opportunities, and you can't even support your own family. You're not being a team player, Ruth." "A team player?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Jessica, I've given you $20,000 in 2 years. I provide free childcare 3 to 4 days a week. How is that not being supportive?" "That's what family does." Jessica's voice rose, causing Emma to look up from her iPad. "Family supports each other. But clearly, you don't understand that. You'd rather sit in some doctor's office than help your son advance his career." Derek remained silent, staring at his shoes like he did when he was 12 and had broken my favorite vase. His silence hurt more than Jessica's words. "You know what?" Jessica gathered Emma's things with sharp, angry movements. "If you can't be there for us when we really need you, then maybe we need to reconsider this whole arrangement. Maybe Emma shouldn't spend so much time with someone who doesn't prioritize family." "Jessica," Derek finally spoke, but she cut him off with a look. "No, Derek. Your mother has made her choice. She's choosing herself over us, over Emma." She picked up Emma, who immediately started crying, reaching for me. "Gamma! Want Gamma!" "No, sweetie. Grandma is too busy for us." Jessica's words were aimed at Emma, but meant for me. "We're going home." As they left, Derek paused at the door. For a moment, I thought he might say something, might stand up for me. Instead, he just said, "You'll regret this, Mom." The door closed, and I stood there in my suddenly quiet living room, Emma's cry of "Gamma" still echoing in my ears. I didn't know then that those would be prophetic words. Monday morning arrived with the kind of persistent drizzle that makes your bones ache. I'd spent the weekend alone, anxiously waiting for my appointment with Dr. Coleman. Derek hadn't returned my calls, and Jessica had blocked my number. But I told myself this would blow over, like their other tantrums always did. After my appointment, where Dr. Coleman confirmed I needed immediate medication changes and weekly monitoring, I drove to Derek's house. I still had my key, the one they'd given me, for emergencies and to make it easier when you're watching Emma. It was 11 a.m. Jessica would be at her part-time job at the boutique. Derek at his office, and Emma at preschool. I just wanted to leave a peace offering, Emma's favorite stuffed elephant that she'd left at my house, and a note apologizing for the timing conflict. I inserted my key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. I tried again, jiggling it the way you do when a lock is sticky. Nothing. That's when I noticed it. The lock was new, a shiny brass deadbolt that hadn't been there on Friday. My hands started shaking as I rang the doorbell. Maybe there had been a break-in. Maybe they'd had to change the locks for security reasons and simply forgot to tell me. The door opened, and there stood Jessica. Not at work, after all. She was wearing designer loungewear and holding a cup of coffee like she'd been expecting me. "Ruth," she said coolly, "what are you doing here?" "My key doesn't work," I said stupidly, still processing. "That's because we changed the locks." She took a sip of her coffee, watching my face over the rim. "Derek and I discussed it over the weekend. If you can't be relied upon to support this family when we need you, then you don't need unrestricted access to our home." But I watch Emma here. I help with—" "That arrangement is over." She leaned against the doorframe like we were discussing the weather. "I've enrolled Emma in full-time daycare. It's better for her to be around people who actually prioritize her well-being." "Jessica, this is insane. I missed one weekend because of a medical appointment." "It's not just about the weekend, Ruth. It's about your whole attitude. You throw money in our faces like it makes you some kind of saint. You act like watching your own granddaughter is some huge burden. Family supports each other unconditionally. You clearly have conditions." "Where's Derek?" My voice cracked. "I want to talk to my son." "Your son agrees with me. In fact, this was partly his idea." She smiled then, a cold, satisfied smile. "He's tired of your guilt trips, your constant complaining about money, your selfish behavior." As if on cue, Derek appeared behind her. He wouldn't meet my eyes, just stood there like a stranger, like I hadn't carried him for 9 months, raised him alone after Robert died, sacrificed everything for his happiness. "Derek, please," I whispered. "This is crazy. I'm your mother." "Mom." He still wouldn't look at me. "Jessica's right. You need to think about your priorities. Until you can be a supportive member of this family, it's better if we have some space." "Space? What about Emma? Emma needs positive influences in her life," Jessica interrupted. "Not someone who chooses doctor appointments over family." That's when I heard it. Emma's voice from inside the house. "Gamma? Is that Gamma?" Jessica quickly shut the door more, blocking my view. "She'll forget about you soon enough. Children are adaptable." "You can't keep her from me. I'm her grandmother." "Actually, we can." Jessica's smile widened. "Minnesota doesn't have strong grandparents' rights laws. I've already consulted a lawyer. Unless we decide to let you see her, you have no legal recourse." The rain started falling harder, soaking through my thin cardigan. I stood there, locked out of my son's home, forbidden from seeing my granddaughter, while the 2 people I'd sacrificed everything for watched me like I was a problem to be solved. "Please," I said one more time, hating how broken I sounded. "Please, don't do this." Jessica started to close the door. "You did this to yourself, Ruth. When you're ready to be a real grandmother, a real mother, maybe we'll reconsider. Until then—" The door clicked shut. I stood there in the rain, staring at that new lock, while Emma's muffled voice called for me from inside. That's when I decided to open the envelope. You know, standing in that rain, locked out of my own son's life, I felt something I'd never experienced before, complete betrayal by the people I loved most. Have you ever given everything to your family, only to be told it's not enough? Have you ever been punished for taking care of your own health? I need you to know if you're watching this and nodding along, you're not alone. And what happened next? Well, let's just say Jessica had no idea what she'd just awakened in me. If this story is resonating with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, was I wrong to prioritize my health? And now, let me tell you about the envelope that changed everything. My hands were still shaking from the cold rain as I sat at my kitchen table, Eleanor's envelope in front of me. The return address was from Mitchell, Barnes and Associates, a law firm in downtown Minneapolis that I'd heard handled high-profile estate cases. I'd been putting off opening it for 2 months, afraid to face another reminder of loss. Eleanor and I had been like sisters growing up in rural Minnesota, but life took us in different directions. She went to MIT, then Silicon Valley, becoming one of the early female tech entrepreneurs. I married Robert, had Derek, and built a quiet life teaching 3rd grade. We exchanged Christmas cards and occasional emails, but I hadn't seen her in person for 5 years before she died. I sliced open the envelope with my letter opener, the one Robert had given me for our 20th anniversary. Inside were several documents and a personal letter in Eleanor's distinctive handwriting. "My dearest Ruth," it began. "If you're reading this, then my cancer finally won. Don't mourn too long for me. I lived exactly the life I wanted, but you, my sweet cousin, you've lived the life everyone else wanted for you." I had to stop reading to wipe my eyes. "I've watched from afar as you sacrificed everything for others. First for Robert, who was a good man but never appreciated your brilliance, then for Derek, who inherited his father's tendency to take you for granted. You were always the smartest one in our family, Ruth, but also the kindest, and people have taken advantage of that kindness your whole life." The next paragraph made me gasp. "That's why I'm leaving you the bulk of my estate. The lawyers will explain the details, but it comes to about $2.3 million after taxes. I know you'll want to give it all to Derek immediately. Don't. This money is for you, to finally live the life you deserve. Remember what Grandma used to say? Never let anyone treat you like a doormat, especially family. $2.3 million. I read the number 3 times, sure I was misunderstanding, but the legal documents confirmed it. Checking accounts, investment portfolios, even a vacation property in Florida I never knew she owned. My phone rang, startling me. It was Barbara Mitchell. I recognized the name from the law firm. "Mrs. Thompson? I'm Eleanor's estate attorney, but I'm calling as more than that. Eleanor was my client for 15 years, and she spoke of you often. I heard you haven't been to our office yet to complete the paperwork." I just opened the letter," I admitted. "I see. Ruth, may I call you Ruth? Eleanor made me promise to look after you. She was worried about your situation with your son and daughter-in-law. How did she—" "She hired a private investigator last year when she was first diagnosed. She wanted to make sure her money would go to someone who deserved it. The investigator's report was concerning." My stomach dropped. "Concerning how?" "Ruth, has your daughter-in-law ever asked you for large sums of money? Has she restricted your access to your granddaughter as a form of control?" I couldn't speak for a moment. "How do you know about that?" "Because I've seen this pattern before. Financial elder abuse is more common than you'd think, especially when it's disguised as family helping family. Eleanor wanted to make sure you had the resources to protect yourself." "They just changed the locks on me," I heard myself say. "Today, because I wouldn't cancel a doctor's appointment to babysit." There was a pause. "Ruth, I'm coming over. What's your address?" An hour later, Barbara Mitchell sat in my living room, a formidable woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes that turned steel sharp when I told her everything. She took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "First," she said when I finished, "you're not crazy, and you're not a bad mother or grandmother. You're a victim of emotional and financial abuse. Second, Jessica is wrong about grandparents' rights in Minnesota. While it's true they're not as strong as in some states, you have an established relationship with Emma and have been a primary caregiver. We can fight this." "But I don't want to hurt Derek." "Derek is hurting you," Barbara said firmly, "and he's allowing his wife to hurt you worse. Eleanor saw this coming, Ruth. That's why she made sure you'd have the resources to fight back." She pulled out her phone and showed me something that made my blood run cold. Screenshots from Jessica's social media taken by the investigator, posts about their investments and business ventures that I recognized as the money I'd given them, pictures from expensive vacations they'd taken while claiming to be broke, and most damning, a text conversation where Jessica told a friend she had her mother-in-law wrapped around her finger and could get money whenever she wanted. Eleanor wanted you to see these only if necessary, Barbara said gently. She hoped things would improve, but Ruth, you need to understand, Jessica has been planning this for a long time. The moment you finally said no, she was ready to cut you off. This isn't about one missed weekend. This is about control. Barbara became my lifeline over the next 2 weeks. She helped me organize every receipt, every bank statement, every text message. The total was staggering, $47,000 over 3 years, not including the free childcare that would have cost them at least $30,000 annually at market rates. This is textbook financial exploitation, Barbara said, reviewing the documentation. But we need more than just financial records. We need witnesses. That's when I thought of Mrs. Patterson, my next-door neighbor. Dorothy Patterson was 78, sharp as a tack, and had opinions about everything, especially Jessica. "Oh, honey," Mrs. Patterson said when I asked if she'd be willing to provide a statement. "I've been waiting 3 years for someone to ask me about that woman. Come in, I'll make tea and I'll tell you everything." Mrs. Patterson's testimony was damning. She'd witnessed Jessica screaming at me on my front lawn when I'd said I couldn't afford to pay for their vacation. She'd seen Jessica drop Emma off at 5 a.m. without warning, leaving me scrambling to cancel my physical therapy. Most importantly, she'd overheard Jessica on the phone in my backyard, bragging about how she was training the old lady to hand over money without questioning. "I wanted to say something," Mrs. Patterson admitted, "but I didn't want to interfere. I should have spoken up sooner." We were building our case when my phone rang at 11 p.m. the following Tuesday. It was Derek, and he was crying. "Mom?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Can you meet me? Please, not at home. Jessica can't know." We met at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. Derek looked terrible, unshaven, red-eyed, 10 pounds thinner than when I'd last seen him. "I'm sorry," he said before I even sat down. "God, Mom, I'm so sorry." "Derek, what's happening?" "She controls everything." The words tumbled out like a dam breaking. "The bank accounts are all in her name. She moved them last year, said it was for tax purposes. I don't even have access to my own paycheck anymore. She gives me an allowance, $40 a week for gas and lunch." I reached across the table and took his hand. It was shaking. "I wanted to call you after that day, but she monitors my phone. She has tracking apps, reads all my texts. I had to buy this burner phone just to contact you." He pulled out a cheap flip phone. "Mom, I think I want a divorce, but I'm terrified I'll lose Emma." "We'll figure this out," I promised. "I have a lawyer." No!" He pulled his hand back. "You can't tell anyone I talked to you. If Jessica finds out, she's already threatened to claim I'm an unfit father. She has this whole story prepared about my depression, how I can't be trusted with Emma. Some of it's even true. I have been depressed, living like this." "Derek, you're being abused. This isn't your fault." He laughed bitterly. "Isn't it? I stood there while she locked you out. I chose her over you, over and over again." "You were being manipulated. I need to go." He stood abruptly. "She thinks I'm at the gym. If I'm gone too long, Mom, just please be careful. Jessica's planning something. I heard her on the phone with someone about dealing with the Ruth problem permanently. I don't know what that means, but it scared me." After he left, I sat in that diner for another hour, processing everything. My son was a prisoner in his own marriage, and my granddaughter was being raised by a woman who saw family as nothing more than a resource to exploit. Barbara's reaction the next day was swift and decisive. "We're filing immediately," she said, "not just for grandparents' rights, but for a wellness check on Derek and Emma. And Ruth, I think you should consider a restraining order." "That seems extreme." "Your son just told you Jessica is planning to deal with you permanently. That's a threat. We're not taking chances." That's when Jessica made her next move. I woke up Thursday morning to my phone exploding with notifications. Jessica had posted on Facebook, tagging everyone we knew. It breaks my heart to share this, but I need support from my community. My mother-in-law, Ruth Thompson, has chosen to abandon her family. Despite our attempts to include her in our lives, she refuses to help with her own granddaughter, prioritizing her social life over family. We've had to make the difficult decision to protect our daughter from this toxic influence. Please keep our family in your prayers as we navigate this painful situation." The comments were brutal. People I'd known for years were calling me selfish, heartless, a terrible grandmother. Some were from parents whose children I'd taught, people who should have known better. But then something unexpected happened. 3 of my former students, now adults, jumped to my defense. They shared stories of my kindness, my dedication, how I'd helped them through difficult times. The tide began to turn. Barbara smiled when she saw the posts. "She just gave us evidence of defamation. Keep documenting everything." Jessica's social media campaign escalated quickly. Every day brought new posts, each more vindictive than the last. She posted old photos of me with Emma, adding captions like, "Back when she pretended to care," and "Emma keeps asking why Grandma doesn't love her anymore. How do I explain such selfishness to a 2-year-old?" My phone rang constantly. Some calls were from concerned friends, others from people I barely knew who felt entitled to scold me. One woman from my book club actually said, "I always thought you were different, Ruth, but I guess we never really know people." The worst part was the isolation. I found myself afraid to leave the house, worried about running into someone who'd seen Jessica's posts. My diabetes was getting worse from the stress. Dr. Coleman had to adjust my medication twice in 1 week. "Your blood sugar levels are dangerously erratic," Dr. Coleman said during an emergency appointment. "This stress is literally killing you, Ruth. What's going on?" When I told her everything, she was horrified. "This is abuse, plain and simple. I'm documenting all of this in your medical records. The physical impact of emotional abuse is real and measurable. Your daughter-in-law is affecting your health in quantifiable ways." She wrote a detailed medical report that Barbara added to our growing case file. "This is powerful evidence," Barbara said. "Judges take medical documentation seriously." Meanwhile, Jessica's lies were becoming more elaborate. She posted a story about how I'd supposedly shown up drunk at Emma's daycare. I hadn't even known which daycare they'd chosen, and had to be escorted out. Complete fabrication, but people believed it. That's when my former student, Marcus Williams, now a successful marketing executive, called me. "Mrs. Thompson, I've been watching this unfold on Facebook, and I'm disgusted," he said. "You saved my life when I was 12. Literally talked me out of suicide. I'm not letting this woman destroy you." Marcus organized what he called a truth campaign. He and 14 other former students created a Facebook page called The Real Ruth Thompson, where they shared stories of my kindness, dedication, and integrity. They posted photos from over the years, class parties, graduation ceremonies, the time I organized a fundraiser for a student whose house had burned down. The response was immediate. Hundreds of people began sharing their own stories. Parents talked about how I'd stayed after school to tutor their struggling children for free. Colleagues remembered how I'd mentored new teachers, always with patience and encouragement. Jessica tried to do damage control, claiming I'd manipulated people into defending me, but the sheer volume of testimonials was overwhelming. Then she made a critical mistake. She posted a video, clearly filmed secretly, of Derek looking exhausted and defeated, with a caption, "My poor husband, dealing with his toxic mother's influence. She's trying to break up our marriage now." But people noticed things Jessica hadn't intended to show. Derek's hollow eyes, the way he flinched when Jessica touched his shoulder, how thin he'd become. The comments shifted. "Is Derek okay? He looks unwell." This seems like Jessica is the one causing problems. Why would you post this? This feels invasive and wrong. Barbara was ecstatic. "She's hanging herself with her own rope. This video could be evidence of spousal abuse. Look at his body language. Classic signs of an abuse victim." Dr. Coleman called that afternoon. "Ruth, I've been thinking. I have a colleague, Dr. Sarah Hendricks, who specializes in family trauma and abuse dynamics. Would you be willing to see her? It might help your case to have a psychological evaluation showing the impact of the situation." I agreed, though the thought of being evaluated made me nervous. Dr. Hendricks was younger than I expected, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that immediately put me at ease. "Ruth, what you're describing is a classic case of narcissistic abuse by proxy," she explained after our 2-hour session. "Jessica exhibits all the hallmarks: isolation tactics, financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and now a smear campaign. The fact that she's using your granddaughter as a weapon is particularly cruel, but unfortunately common. She wrote a comprehensive report that Barbara said was gold for our case, but Jessica wasn't done yet. Saturday morning, I woke to pounding on my door. 2 police officers stood on my porch. "Ma'am, we received a report that you've been harassing Jessica Thompson and making threats against her family." My heart nearly stopped. "That's absolutely not true. I haven't had any contact with her since she changed the locks on me 3 weeks ago." I called Barbara immediately. She arrived within minutes, still in her weekend gardening clothes but radiating authority. "Officers, my client is the victim here, not the perpetrator. We have extensive documentation of Mrs. Jessica Thompson's harassment campaign. In fact, we're filing charges on Monday." After reviewing our evidence, the officers apologized and left. One even said quietly, "Ma'am, my grandmother went through something similar. Don't give up." Barbara turned to me after they left. "This is escalation. Jessica's getting desperate. That means we're winning." But winning didn't feel like victory when I couldn't hug my granddaughter or help my son escape his nightmare marriage. The court date was set for October 15th, exactly 1 month after Jessica had changed the locks. Barbara filed 3 separate but related cases: a petition for grandparent visitation rights, a defamation suit, and most surprisingly, a financial elder abuse claim that could carry criminal charges. Jessica hired an attorney, Barbara informed me the week before trial. Bradley Morrison. He's known for aggressive tactics, but not particularly skilled in family law. I think she chose him for intimidation factor rather than expertise. But Morrison dropped the case 3 days before trial. Barbara found out why through her network. Jessica had tried to pay his retainer with a check that bounced. When Morrison investigated further, he discovered she'd lied about several key facts, including forging documents that supposedly showed I'd given her the money as gifts. "No ethical attorney would continue representing her after that," Barbara explained. "She'll have to represent herself or find someone desperate enough to take her case last minute." Meanwhile, Derek was secretly helping our case. He couldn't testify openly. Jessica monitored everything. But he managed to forward me copies of their bank statements showing exactly where my money had gone. Luxury handbags, spa treatments, a $5,000 shopping spree at Nordstrom, all while they claimed to be struggling. The Sunday before court, Derek asked to meet again. This time he brought Emma. "Jessica thinks I'm at the park," he whispered as Emma ran into my arms. "We only have 30 minutes. Emma clung to me, repeating gamma, gamma, gamma over and over. She'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under her tiny eyes. "She cries for you every night," Derek said, his voice breaking. "Jessica tells her you don't want to see her anymore. It's killing me, Mom." "Why don't you leave?" I asked for the 100th time. "With what money? Where would I go? She'd take Emma. She's already told me if I try to leave, she'll claim I'm mentally unstable. She has recordings of me crying, breaking down. Taken out of context, they'd look terrible in a custody hearing." I held Emma tighter, memorizing the feeling of her small body against mine. "After tomorrow, things will change. I promise. Be careful, Mom. Jessica's been acting strange, manic almost. She keeps saying she has a nuclear option if things don't go her way in court." That night, I couldn't sleep. Barbara had prepared me thoroughly. What to wear, conservative but not severe, how to speak, clearly without emotion, what to expect. Jessica would likely try to provoke me. But I kept thinking about Derek's warning. What was Jessica's nuclear option? The morning of October 15th dawned crisp and clear. I dressed carefully in the navy suit Barbara had approved, pinned on the small gold cross Robert had given me for our anniversary, and drove to the courthouse with Mrs. Patterson, who'd insisted on coming for moral support. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing footsteps. Barbara met me at the entrance, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that screamed authority. "Judge Thompson, no relation to you, is presiding. She's known for being tough but fair, especially protective of elderly victims. This is good for us." We entered the courtroom to find it surprisingly full. Marcus had rallied my former students and their families. Several neighbors were there. Dr. Coleman had come, as had Dr. Hendricks. Even my old teaching colleagues had shown up. But what shocked me most was seeing Robert's sister, Patricia, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. "Family sticks together," she said simply, squeezing my hand. Jessica arrived 15 minutes late, dressed inappropriately in a tight red dress and stilettos. She'd clearly expected an empty courtroom and looked shaken by the crowd. Derek wasn't with her. She'd left Emma with him, probably to prevent me from seeing her. "Your Honor," Jessica began, before the judge even called the court to order. "This is harassment. All these people are here to intimidate me." Judge Thompson's eyes were cold. "Ma'am, this is a public courtroom. Anyone may attend. Now sit down and wait your turn." Barbara presented our case methodically: financial records, medical documentation, witness testimonies, the Facebook posts, blown up on poster board for impact. Dr. Coleman testified about my declining health due to stress. Dr. Hendricks explained the psychological abuse dynamics. Mrs. Patterson described what she'd witnessed. Then Barbara played her ace, a recording Derek had secretly made of Jessica screaming at him, saying, "Your mother is nothing but a wallet to us. The moment she stops being useful, she's gone, and you better not defend her, or you'll be gone too." Jessica's face went white. She hadn't known about the recording. When it was Jessica's turn to respond, she was clearly rattled. Her story kept changing. First, I'd given her the money freely. Then it was loans she intended to repay. Then it was payment for emotional damage I'd supposedly caused. "Mrs. Thompson, Jessica Thompson," Judge Thompson clarified, her tone sharp. "Do you have any documentation supporting your claims?" My lawyer quit. I haven't had time." "You've had a month to prepare. Do you or do you not have evidence?" That's when Jessica made her fatal error. "I don't need evidence. Everyone knows Ruth is a manipulative old woman who uses money to control people. She probably paid all these people to be here." The courtroom gasped. Judge Thompson's gavel came down hard. "That's enough. I've heard all I need to make my decision." Friends, sitting in that courtroom, watching Jessica unravel, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. You know, sometimes we let people treat us badly because we think that's what love looks like. We think sacrifice means accepting abuse, but it doesn't. If someone in your life is making you choose between your health and their demands, between your dignity and their approval, that's not love, that's manipulation. I need you to understand something. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's survival. If this story is helping you see your own situation more clearly, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And now, let me tell you what happened when the judge delivered her verdict and Jessica's shocking response that nobody saw coming. Judge Thompson adjusted her glasses and looked directly at Jessica. "Mrs. Jessica Thompson, before I deliver my ruling, I have some questions. You claim Mrs. Ruth Thompson gave you $47,000 as gifts. Can you explain why someone living on a teacher's pension would give such generous gifts?" Jessica's voice wavered. She wanted to help her family." "I see. And in return for these gifts, what did you provide?" We let her see Emma." The judge's eyebrows rose. "So you're saying access to her granddaughter was conditional on payment?" "No, that's not... that sounds like extortion, Mrs. Thompson." Barbara stood. "Your Honor, if I may, we've just received additional information relevant to this case." The judge nodded. "Proceed." "We've discovered that Mrs. Jessica Thompson has been under investigation by Adult Protective Services for 3 months following a report from a concerned neighbor. Not Mrs. Patterson, another neighbor who wishes to remain anonymous. They witnessed Mrs. Jessica Thompson physically preventing Mrs. Ruth Thompson from leaving her home until she wrote a check." Jessica jumped up. "That's a lie!" "Sit down." Judge Thompson's voice was sharp. "Counselor, do you have documentation?" Barbara handed a folder to the bailiff. "The APS report, Your Honor. They were planning to interview Mrs. Ruth Thompson this week." As the judge reviewed the documents, Jessica was frantically texting on her phone. The judge noticed. "Mrs. Jessica Thompson, hand your phone to the bailiff immediately." I need to check on my daughter," Your phone. Now. Jessica reluctantly handed it over. The judge looked at the screen, her expression darkening. You're texting someone named Brad saying, "Code red, get Emma and meet me at the airport. Bailiff, please ensure Mrs. Jessica Thompson doesn't leave this courtroom." That's when the courtroom doors opened and Derek walked in, with Emma in his arms and 2 police officers beside him. "Your Honor," one officer said, "we received a call about a possible child abduction attempt. This gentleman says his wife was planning to take their child out of state without his consent." Derek's voice was strong for the first time in years. "Your Honor, I'd like to testify." Jessica screamed, "You can't! You're my husband! Spousal privilege!" "That doesn't apply in cases involving child welfare or when one spouse is victim to the other's crimes," Judge Thompson replied coldly. "Mr. Thompson, please take the stand." Derek's testimony was devastating. He detailed years of financial control, emotional manipulation, and threats. He showed text messages where Jessica threatened to accuse him of abuse if he didn't comply with her demands. He revealed that she'd been planning to leave the state with Emma and the money she expected to win from me in a countersuit. "She said she'd make Mom pay one way or another," Derek said, looking at me with tears in his eyes. "She was going to claim Mom had dementia and try to get power of attorney over her finances. She found out about the inheritance." "What inheritance?" Judge Thompson asked. That's when Barbara revealed Eleanor's bequest. $2.3 million, Your Honor. Mrs. Ruth Thompson recently inherited this sum from her late cousin. We believe Mrs. Jessica Thompson discovered this and escalated her campaign to gain control over Mrs. Ruth Thompson and her assets. The courtroom erupted. Jessica's face went from pale to red to purple. "That money should be Derek's," she shrieked. "It should be Emma's. That selfish old bitch is keeping it from us." "Mrs. Jessica Thompson, you're in contempt of court. Bailiff, restrain her." As the bailiff approached, Jessica made a run for Emma. Derek instinctively turned, protecting their daughter, as Jessica clawed at his back. The police officers quickly subdued her, but not before everyone saw her true nature: violent, desperate, completely unhinged. Judge Thompson's ruling was swift and comprehensive. In the matter of grandparent visitation rights, I grant Mrs. Ruth Thompson immediate supervised visitation with her granddaughter to transition to unsupervised visits within 30 days. In the matter of defamation, I find for the plaintiff, Mrs. Jessica Thompson will pay damages of $50,000 and issue a public retraction of all false statements. In the matter of financial elder abuse, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. The evidence suggests felony theft by deception. Furthermore, given Mrs. Jessica Thompson's behavior in this courtroom, including attempted child abduction and assault, I'm issuing an immediate restraining order protecting Mrs. Ruth Thompson, Mr. Derek Thompson, and the minor child Emma Thompson from Mrs. Jessica Thompson. Mr. Derek Thompson, I strongly advise you to file for emergency custody and divorce immediately. This court will expedite any such filing. Mrs. Jessica Thompson, you're remanded into custody pending criminal charges. Bail hearing will be set for tomorrow morning. Jessica was dragged from the courtroom screaming threats and obscenities. The last thing she yelled was, "You'll pay for this, Ruth! I'll destroy you!" Derek collapsed in tears, Emma still in his arms. I rushed to them, and for the first time in over a month, held both my son and granddaughter. "I'm so sorry, Mom," Derek sobbed. "I'm so sorry." "Shh," I said, holding them both. "It's over now. You're safe." But even as I comforted them, I knew it wasn't really over. Jessica would make bail. She'd fight the charges. She'd try to make our lives hell. But looking around that courtroom, at Barbara's satisfied smile, at my former students' supportive faces, at Mrs. Patterson wiping tears from her eyes, I knew we'd won the most important battle. We'd won our freedom. Jessica made bail the next morning, $50,000 posted by her mother, who flew in from Arizona. But freedom came with strict conditions: no contact with Derek, Emma, or me, no social media posts about the case, and an ankle monitor to ensure she didn't flee the state. Derek filed for divorce and emergency custody that same day. Barbara connected him with an excellent family lawyer, Diane Morrison, no relation to Jessica's former attorney, who worked on a sliding scale Derek could afford. The criminal charges are serious, Barbara explained to us over coffee that week. Financial elder abuse in Minnesota is a felony when the amount exceeds $35,000. She's looking at up to 10 years in prison and $20,000 in fines. Plus the attempted kidnapping charge and assault in the courtroom. She's in real trouble. The district attorney, a sharp woman named Linda Chen, was particularly interested in the case. Elder abuse is underreported and underprosecuted, she told me. Your case could set a precedent. Would you be willing to testify at the criminal trial? I agreed, though the thought terrified me. But something had changed in me since that day in the rain. Eleanor was right. I'd spent my whole life being a doormat. No more. Derek and Emma moved in with me temporarily while he got back on his feet. It was heartbreaking to see how damaged they both were. Emma had nightmares, crying for Mama one moment and cowering from loud noises the next. Derek was like a ghost, jumping at every phone ring, constantly apologizing for existing. It's called trauma bonding, Dr. Hendricks explained during a family session. Jessica created a cycle of abuse and intermittent reinforcement that's psychologically addictive. Recovery takes time. 3 weeks after the hearing, Jessica violated her restraining order. She showed up at Emma's daycare, trying to convince the staff she had custody. The daycare director, thankfully, called the police immediately. Jessica was arrested again, and this time, bail was revoked. From jail, she continued her campaign through her mother, Diane. The woman called me incessantly, leaving voicemails that ranged from pleading to threatening. "You've destroyed my daughter's life. She made mistakes, but she doesn't deserve this. What kind of Christian are you?" I finally answered one call. "Diane, your daughter stole $47,000 from me, abused my son, traumatized my granddaughter, and tried to kidnap her. She's facing the consequences of her own actions." "She's not well," Diane admitted quietly. "She's never been well, but prison won't help her." "Maybe not," I said, "but it will keep her from hurting anyone else." The criminal trial was set for January. In the meantime, life slowly began to normalize. Derek started therapy and got his finances in order, discovering Jessica had opened credit cards in his name, maxing them out. The debt was staggering, $75,000. "We can fight this," Diane Morrison assured him. "Identity theft by a spouse is still identity theft." I used some of Eleanor's money to pay for Derek's therapy and legal fees. The rest I put into trusts, one for Emma's education, one for Derek's fresh start, and one for a charity Eleanor had supported that helped elder abuse victims. "You're giving it all away?" Barbara asked, surprised. "Not all. I'm keeping enough to be comfortable, but Eleanor was right. This money is power. Power to protect my family, to help others, to make sure no one else goes through what we did." The trial in January was brutal. Jessica had found a public defender who tried to paint her as a victim. Postpartum depression, anxiety, a difficult childhood. But the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the bank statements, the witnesses. Even her own mother, in a moment of honesty, admitted Jessica had always been difficult with money and relationships. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, Jessica was given the chance to speak. Instead of showing remorse, she launched into a tirade about how we'd all conspired against her, how she was the real victim, how we'd stolen her life. Judge Clarence Williams, who'd presided over the criminal trial, was unmoved. "Mrs. Thompson, you've shown no remorse, no acknowledgement of the harm you've caused. You traumatized a child, destroyed your marriage, and financially devastated an elderly woman who'd shown you nothing but kindness. I sentence you to 8 years in state prison, followed by 5 years probation. You're also ordered to pay full restitution to Mrs. Ruth Thompson." Jessica screamed as they led her away. "This isn't over! I'll get out! I'll get my daughter back!" Derek's divorce was finalized while Jessica was in prison. He was awarded full custody of Emma, with Jessica getting no visitation rights until Emma turned 18 and could decide for herself. 6 months later, we received news that Jessica had been placed in the prison's psychiatric ward after attacking another inmate who wouldn't give her commissary money. Her mother finally admitted what we'd suspected. Jessica had a long history of manipulation and violence that the family had hidden and enabled. We thought if she got married, had a baby, she'd change, Diane told me in our last conversation. We were wrong. I'm sorry for everything. Derek slowly rebuilt his life. He got a better job, started dating a kind woman named Sarah who was wonderful with Emma, and even began to smile again. Emma, with play therapy and love, blossomed back into the happy child she'd been before. And me? I learned to live without guilt, without constantly sacrificing myself for others' approval. I joined a support group for elder abuse survivors, sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs. 6 months after Jessica's sentencing, our lives had transformed completely. Derek had moved into his own apartment 10 minutes from my house, close enough for daily visits but far enough to maintain healthy boundaries. Emma spent weekdays with him and Sarah, weekends with me. It was a rhythm that worked, built on respect rather than obligation. One Sunday morning, as I taught Emma to paint watercolors in my sunroom, she said something that stopped my heart. "Gamma, why did Mama hurt Daddy?" I set down my brush, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people are sick in their hearts and minds. They don't know how to love properly, so they hurt the people closest to them." "Is Mama still sick?" "Yes, honey, she's getting help now." Emma considered this, then returned to her painting, a bright yellow sun over a little house. "I'm glad we're safe now." From the mouths of babes, Derek had changed profoundly. The hollow-eyed ghost who'd hidden burner phones was gone, replaced by a man who stood tall, spoke clearly, and had learned to say no. He'd even started a support group for male abuse survivors, breaking the silence that had nearly destroyed him. "You saved my life, Mom," he told me one evening as we watched Emma play in my backyard. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Stop!" I took his hand. "You were a victim too. Jessica is a master manipulator. She didn't just steal money. She stole your voice, your confidence, your sense of self. The fact that you broke free, that you protected Emma when it mattered most, that took incredible courage. I should have protected you too. You did in the end. That's what counts." The doorbell interrupted us. It was Barbara, holding a bottle of champagne and wearing a rare smile. "We won the civil suit," she announced. "Jessica's mother settled. She'll pay the full $47,000 plus damages, $75,000 total. She doesn't want this going to trial and becoming more public than it already is." I stared at the check Barbara handed me. "I don't want it." "Ruth?" "No, I mean it. Set up a fund for elder abuse victims. Call it Eleanor's Fund. She'd like that." Barbara studied me. "You've really changed." "Eleanor's money gave me the power to fight back. Maybe this can help someone else do the same." 2 weeks later, I received a letter from prison. Jessica's handwriting, but not her usual tone. "Ruth, my therapist says I need to make amends. I don't know how. I destroyed everything. I see that now. The medication helps. They diagnosed me with narcissistic personality disorder and bipolar. Not excuses, just explanations. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know, Emma was never a weapon to me. I do love her, in my broken way. Please make sure she knows that someday, when she's old enough to understand." I'm sorry. Those words aren't enough, but they're all I have. Jessica. I showed the letter to Derek. He read it twice, then burned it in my fireplace. "Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear her apologies," he said, "but not today." The next month, I used Eleanor's inheritance to establish the Eleanor Fitzgerald Center for Elder Rights. Barbara agreed to provide pro bono consultations, and Dr. Hendricks offered counseling services. Within 6 months, we'd helped 12 families escape financial abuse. Marcus, my former student, created a documentary about our story. It went viral, sparking a national conversation about elder abuse. I received hundreds of letters from people sharing their own stories, thanking me for speaking out. "You've become quite the advocate," Dr. Coleman said at my checkup. "And look, your blood sugar is perfectly controlled. Amazing what happens when you remove toxic stress." 1 year after that terrible day in the rain, we held Emma's 3rd birthday party in my backyard. The guest list was small but meaningful. Derek, Sarah, Mrs. Patterson, Barbara, some former students, Patricia. No drama, no manipulation, just genuine love and laughter. As Emma blew out her candles, I thought about Eleanor's letter, still kept in my desk drawer. Never let anyone treat you like a doormat, especially family. I'd learned the lesson finally, but more importantly, I'd learned something Eleanor hadn't written, that setting boundaries isn't about punishing others. It's about loving yourself enough to demand respect. It's about teaching your children and grandchildren that love without respect isn't love at all. Derek found me sitting alone on the porch as the party wound down. "Mom, I've been thinking. Sarah and we're getting married. Small ceremony, just family. Would you be my best person?" I hugged my son, really hugged him, for the first time in years without fear or reservation. I'd be honored. As the sun set over Minneapolis, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Emma climbed into my lap, paint-stained from the day's activities. "Gamma, are you happy?" I kissed the top of her head, breathing in her little girl smell of sunshine and birthday cake. "Yes, sweetheart. Grandma is very happy." And for the first time in decades, it was the complete truth. The last update came 6 months later. Jessica was transferred to a minimum security facility with a strong psychiatric program. She'd earned her GED, started taking college courses, and by all reports was genuinely working on herself. Maybe she'd emerge a different person. Maybe not. But that was her journey now, not ours. Our journey was simpler, learning to be a family built on respect, boundaries, and genuine love. It wasn't perfect. Derek still had bad days, Emma still had nightmares sometimes, and I still caught myself apologizing for taking up space. But we were healing together. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. That's the lesson I learned at 62, the gift Eleanor gave me along with her fortune. And now I pass it on to you, to my dear friends. If you're watching this and seeing your own reflection in my story, please know you deserve respect, regardless of your age, regardless of family ties. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary. You are not obligated to light yourself on fire to keep others warm. What do you think? Should I have forgiven Jessica completely? Should family always mean unconditional support, even when it destroys us? Share your thoughts below. If this story helped you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you are worthy of love that doesn't hurt. Thank you for listening to my story.